This is Deborah Atkinson, and you're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top questions and struggles. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to think to get the energy and vitality that you want in the second and better half. And if you, like so many people, are starting an exercise program as we record this live, it's the beginning of the year. And although there are other times when we really kind of start hitting a get started now kind of a program right before summer, right as we get back into routine in the fall, or two other times, there is no other more likely to find you starting a new exercise commitment or restarting than right now. So, this episode is all about 7 walking mistakes that prevent weight loss after 50 and what you can do about them. Walking mistakes may be keeping you from your best result. Doctors often recommend walking as a best exercise. However, the blanket walk advice leaves a lot of information out. You've got less room for error after 50, especially if you're in menopause. If you've added a walking program recently or you've plateaued using one, avoiding these mistakes I'm covering today will help you keep moving in a more effective way. Before we dive in, this episode is sponsored by CBD for Life. And if this time of year finds you a little sore from workouts, CBD is a new tool in my toolbox, providing the anti-inflammatory properties without the THC or the feelings of being high. I use mine most often on my upper back and neck, although recently I'm applying to my quads as I've started running again. I even gifted some to my 93-year-old mom for her lower back. I love not only that it works, it's harvested thoughtfully, and that it's a female-founded company. I'll link in the show notes to it and to how you can get a discount for being a Flipping 50 listener to try it yourself. Okay, so here we go. Number 1, and remember, I'm covering 7 walking mistakes here. Too much, too soon. Fitness mistakes like this are the number 1 reason for injury. I so understand the desire to get results from, yesterday's yesterday. However, it just won't work in the long term. You've got to have a foundation before you ramp up to more. Smart starts lead to flipping fantastic finishes. Sorry about the alliteration, but I couldn't help myself. Have you ever tried to read the last page or the last chapter of a book without reading the middle? It's not satisfying. It doesn't have the impact or the desired outcome on you, and neither will your fitness program. Walking mistakes like this are the cause of overuse injuries like tendinitis. Most often that happens in your IT band on the side of your hip or knee, or bursitis of the hip, or plantar fasciitis. The flip. Walk frequently, but do shorter periods when you're starting, and then add 2 or 3 minutes a week to the total duration of your walk. So week 1, for instance, you'd walk 20 minutes. Maybe you're doing that once, twice, 3 times. But then week 2, you walk 23 minutes. Week 3, so on, you're walking 26 minutes. It may seem slow, but in a month, you go from walking 20 minutes to walking 32 minutes. That's significant, and yet you've allowed your joints, your ligaments, and your muscles to adapt. Mistake number 2 among walking mistakes, no intensity changes. Walking mistakes like this one will prevent fat loss during menopause especially, and that covers a lot of years since it's not uncommon for women to experience perimenopause symptoms for a decade. First of all, it's important to know we should all be walking. It's movement, but we have kind of taken to calling it exercise simply because we don't move anymore. But listen, just walking has become necessary because we all sit so much. You need, however, to have some intense walking some light walking, and some intermittent high and low intensity or intervals walking in your routine. You've got 3 energy systems. We all do. So a single intensity focus all the time is going to ignore 2 of those. It's not good to go all out all the time. It's also not good to go super comfortable all the time. Common mistakes are probably those: always intervals or always long walks. So do have purpose in your workouts, every single one of them. Even if you're at your ideal weight, you look fine, you don't need to lose weight. And by the way, that is in quotations. Just because you look good superficially does not mean you're healthy. Just because you don't need to lose weight does not mean you don't need a healthy heart and to be thinking about how your best aging will happen. You've got to have all 3 systems go. Think down the road. So here's the flip. Plan a long, slow day. Plan a short interval training day with at least 4 repeats of, say, 30 seconds or a minute of fast or hill walking, alternated with recovery. And third, make sure you're planning a moderate intensity day each week. Mistake number 3, you're not doing any strength training. Walking is a cardiovascular workout that will have very little positive influence on your lean muscle mass. You lose muscle mass easier than you gain it after 50, and I know I sound like a broken record, but somebody's got to say it. To preserve lean muscle and definitely to gain it, you absolutely must be strength training. You'll be decreasing your percent body fat by increasing your lean, and that ultimately will support a higher metabolism that helps fat loss. The real clarification you want to make is that fat loss, not weight loss, is your first and your highest priority. You can lose weight, but if it's muscle you're losing, metabolism, if you're losing weight and it's muscle, you're losing metabolism, and you will, because of that, gain fat. So don't go walking down that road after 50. Your posture and the power in the push-off during your walking will improve too when you're strength training. So every step is more effective and efficient. Walking mistake number 4, skipping right to intervals. So similar to the very first mistake we visited here, you have to build a foundation. Speed is known to cause more injury than resistance across the board, and it doesn't matter if we're talking about swimming, we're talking about running, we're talking about walking, we're talking about using the elliptical trainer. Speed causes more injury than does resistance. So before you try something, anything really, fast, you want to have learned the proper way to do it slow. The desire to use intervals when you walk, especially if you've been doing them elsewhere, say you regularly attend a spinning class or you use an elliptical trainer and maybe you're on vacation or can't get to the gym and you're walking, you think, well, I can do intervals here. And yes, you can, but you have to watch out. So every mode of exercise has its nuances, and the body needs a chance to get used to it. Even if you're not breathless or you feel like you could do more, your body has parts that still need to adapt. So the flip is return to mistake number 1 and review it. You have to build that foundation. So little bits at a time, add a little bit more each week. And in this case, you would either add duration or you would add intensity. So you might add, after a few weeks of regular walking, add a few intervals to that first week, right in the middle after a good warm up. The second week, you might add, okay, now I'm going to do 4 intervals. The following week, you might do 5 intervals. And that's not going to climb more. You want to have some weeks where you do, or some workouts where you do interval training, but not every single one. So variety is good. In fact, variety and diversity make you more fit overall. Walking mistake number 5. Skipping the warm up and the cool down. Sure, right? It's just walking, but you want to begin it slowly. That may be your warm up, slowly, progressively warming up. So if you walk, for instance, and don't take this to heart, if you're normally walking faster or slower, don't get set on this number, but let's say your walking speed when you're at peak in the middle of your walk is say 4.0. You don't start walking at that speed. You start maybe walking at 3.0 and gradually increase. So when I'm on a treadmill, I play. Generally after a minute, I'll increase by 1/10 or 2/10 of a mile. So gradually my body gets to adapt. Doesn't feel like much. In fact, I barely notice it. And yet it's enough so that at the end of 5 or 10 minutes, I'm ready and at my peak speed. You may not need a static stretch before you start, meaning stopping and really stretching the hamstrings and the quadriceps and the calves one by one. However, if you do have a history of ankle, knee, or hip issues, I would definitely take a few minutes to stretch those specific sites before you go. And by the way, ankle-related issues are an age-related problem, one that none of us really can avoid. So you want to start thinking about it before you've got problems. And don't read that into saying that you're bound to have ankle problems, but doing range of motion exercises, warming up before you do more than your daily activities of living can help you maintain a range of motion in the ankles as you age. Think of yourself or think of an older adult that you know or that you don't for that matter, and the shuffle, right? The old adult shuffle happens sometimes because we have no more ability to pick that toe up. We just don't have that ankle mobility we used to have. We don't heel strike as we sit down. We don't roll through the foot, and we don't pick that toe up as we walk. So ankle mobility is the cause for all of that, or loss of mobility is the cause of it. So keep yours. Be sure to take 5 or 10 minutes to stretch at the end of a walk, no matter how you warm up. Your muscles are warm, and that means they're ripe for flexibility and the mobility benefits of stretching. You can do a joint and muscle specific stretch, or you can hit several muscle groups at once. For example, something that looks like a warrior pose from yoga is going to hit your whole front kinetic chain. It's going to hit that quadricep, the hip flexor, the core, the front of your shoulders and your chest. But however you stretch, do stretch. Now, how does that help weight loss? Warmups and cooldowns certainly aren't notorious calorie burning, but hey, if you're sidelined because you tried to take shortcuts, your fitness suffers, and so do your walks. No idea how to do warm-ups and cooldowns or pull it all together? You might like the 28-day Kickstart 2.0, and I'll link to that in the show notes, but it is for absolute beginners, starters, or restarters. If it's been a long time and you just can't seem to make it stick for you, you've started a lot but also stopped an equal number of times. I'll link to that in the show notes, but the bus, the train pulling out of the station very soon. This is for February's program, and we don't have another one on the schedule. This is not a monthly offer, so get in now. Mistake number 6, same path every time. Walking mistakes like this are easy to fall into if you're always walking from your house or always walking from the same spot. At least walking in the same terrain repeatedly can really be a problem. So here's why. In a great example, you'd notice it if it were, say, a sharp grade, like it's often true if you're walking on the side of the road. If you're, walking toward the traffic or on the other side and it's a deep slant, you notice that, you feel it. But you may miss it when it's just a rolling hill walk and what seems like a flat surface for you. On a track, for instance, you may notice every other day runners are told to run clockwise or counterclockwise. That can be a real problem. It's not very beneficial for runners who go every other day. it can still cause you to overuse the same muscles and joints if you do it often enough. So change direction so you're rounding corners in a different way. And if you are walking on the side of the road, make sure that you change and walk over on the opposite side of the road, or just find a different path occasionally. So you're changing it up. The flip is definitely change routes or go backwards, not literally your body, but reverse your usual walk on the other side of the street. And just remember, for safety, you should always be walking toward oncoming traffic if you're walking on the side of the road, or if you're walking on a bike path. I also recommend it. Walking mistake number 7. Last but not least, looking only at the calorie burning benefits. If you're only paying attention to calories, you're very likely going to either go long all the time or go hard all the time, or both, which in return will commit several of the mistakes we've already talked about. It's important to know your hormone status, or start listening to clues so you understand it. Are you, say, constantly stressed? You can't get up in the morning. Then a short and slow walk may be the best thing for you in both of those cases. Not because it burns calories, right? A short and slow or low intensity walk, that notoriously doesn't burn many calories, but because it helps reduce cortisol and may help rebalance your hormones. Ultimately, that may help you burn more calories, better off known as burning more fat, and then lose weight. Calories don't control your weight or your fat. Hormones do. So pay attention to your hormones. You can learn more about hormones, their signs and the symptoms. Those are the clues that they give you as to what's happening, and the After 50 fitness formula for women that is both the book and the course. I give you the what to do if. So it's more, if I've got this symptom, this sign, what do I do about it? I'll link to it in the show notes. And as well as that and the 28-day kickstart, I will link to CBD for Life products so you can take a look for yourself about them, the products, and the company, and use Flipping 50 for a special podcast listener discount. Do you have a question? And did I miss it? Are you regularly walking? Really curious. Leave it below this show link at flipping50.com/walking-mistakes. I love to hear from you. And if this episode was helpful, please leave me a rating in iTunes and then share it with a friend. Surround yourself with a supportive community of women on the same journey. To get the most from this week's episode, check out today's show notes. Again, it's flipping50.com/walking-mistakes, where you're going to find the juicy links, the free downloads or resources mentioned on the shows as usual. What are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 together.